subscribe to the glorious episode of the Student Body Right USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. I have Evan Desai here from reignoftroy.com, writer for them, writing for about USC for some time now. Contributor, you've been on the show a little bit. How you doing today, Evan?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. So I guess, according to Vegas and everybody else, Joe Klatt and everybody, like, we shouldn't even watch this game, right? Utah's gonna hold the ball for 35 minutes and gonna beat USC pretty easily.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe they didn't watch last week against UCLA. Maybe they didn't watch that game.
I think so. What are your thoughts about? Okay, we both see USC, we both see Utah. What are your thoughts about them facing mobile quarterbacks? It seems like they kind of struggle in that category, and also their team speed. Struggled against Florida to contain that speed. Struggled against UCLA, and now USC comes to town. It's the first time they played that kind of speed mobile quarterback in their building, but still, this is a tough task for, I think, Utah. And I think also, when I had the host of Locked On Utes on, he said he's very concerned about the Utes defense against USC, and I think that's something that people should think about as well.
Well, yeah, I think, like you talked about, sometimes they've kind of had some struggles when it comes to defending mobile quarterbacks, and defending fast teams. A lot of that comes down to really just not having that type of recruiting base that programs like USC and even UCLA have, with their access to recruits, and, USC and Lincoln Riley in particular being so strong when it comes to roster building. A lot of times some of these smaller schools don't really have the athletes to keep up. So that's definitely something on defense that they'll have to be thinking about, because, when you look at some of even the best Utah teams in the past, they seem to struggle against teams that have a strong talent advantage. The one that keeps coming back to me is 2019. Remember, they were top 10. They came to the Collie, and USC all of a sudden stunned them. And then they show up to the Pac-12 championship against Oregon, and they struggle again when the roster for Oregon was much better than the roster with Utah. Now, obviously, Kyle Whittingham is a better coach than Mario Cristobal and then Clay Helton, but sometimes that talent just kind of takes over. And then we saw in the bowl game that year when they lost to Texas, and so when it comes to kind of, like you said, the team speed, it comes to kind of that athleticism, be able to stop kind of dual threat guys are really dynamic, like, a Dorian Thompson-Robinson or a Caleb Williams, that can present a problem. And, when it comes to, what did the Locked On Youths podcaster say again? What did you say?
He said he's concerned about their defense against USC's offense, because clearly, last week they really couldn't handle UCLA and Charbonneau and all those other weapons. Jake Bobo, he looks like a really good player, going to play on Sundays as well. So it's gonna be I think it's a tough battle for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're watching Travis Dye last week against the defensive front that I thought was actually pretty good in Washington State, you're kind of seeing him take over the game and be that Dye that, USC knows he can be and be able to lean on. And the scary thing about it is that Utah fans, Utah media, they know that USC has some other backs that can make plays too. Raleigh Brown was finally healthy last week, didn't get a lot of touches, but, who knows, he kind of break out in one of these games like he did week one. And I know Lincoln Riley recently, I believe it was today actually, talked about how he wishes he used Austin Jones more. You're looking at these last 2 weeks, Austin Jones hasn't even been used a lot. That the running game just looks so dynamic, So if USC plays their potential on offense, that really comes down to kind of controlling the line of scrimmage, running the ball, and kind of setting the tone. I think it's going to be hard for anyone in the Pac-12 to beat them.
Yeah, it seems that way. How about this thing with the national media who kind of flies in and flies out of this whole thing, where they build up an opponent all week versus USC, and then when USC faces Cameron Ward and holds that offense to 300 yards of offense, 14 points, Thule is playing out of his mind on the defensive line. How can they build up an opponent all week and then just say, oh, and when the game's over, say, oh, USC didn't play anybody?
I can't tell you.
I've heard that all week. It's crazy.
Yeah, the craziest thing was, as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure many listeners know, USC moved down in the poll.
Yes.
They moved to number 7. So you look at who moved ahead of them, Tennessee, who's 5-0. They haven't played 6 games. and they played a ranked team, is what everyone said. It was a ranked win on the road, a dominant ranked win. It was a number 25 LSU team that lost to Florida State earlier this year. Yeah. And like, this isn't like, Bowden Florida State. This is like nowadays Florida State, right? Yeah. And if you look at it, Washington State was the last team did not make the poll last week. They were 26. LSU was 25. So I guess I'll give you that USC was at home and Tennessee was on the road, but the game wasn't close at all with USC. I mean, it was a 16-point game. That's a full 2 scores. Yeah. Again, USC just kind of ran the ball at will the entire last quarter and a half. I don't see how they moved down, and Tennessee moves up 2 spots over Oklahoma State and USC. And it's just that you're looking at it, and it's exactly what you're saying. Everyone gasses up, this is the week that USC is going to drop it. This is the week USC is going to get exposed. That could be this week. I could see that being Utah. But if it doesn't happen, you have to give USC credit, and that's not happening. And, it very well could be the whole East Coast bias type deal.
Yeah, and it's almost I wish that USC played Utah first before UCLA did, because now if they beat Utah, all of a sudden it's going to be like, but it doesn't matter because UCLA dismantled them anyway. So whatever. You mentioned Malik Brown. I think that he and Brendan Rice are getting close to kind of have breaking out games. I think that's a tipping point. I feel like it's interesting because this team plays a lot of man coverage. Caleb Williams is great against man coverage. I guess he struggles against zone coverage. I guess it looks like. What are your thoughts about Brown, Rice, and then the unheralded work of what Solomon Byrd does for this team? Like he does so much of the dirty work, and he had a great tackle for loss on a short yardage play in this game, and I just feel like he doesn't get enough credit because I know Thule, and all people on that defensive side with bigger names.
Oh yeah, I mean Solomon Byrd is obviously kind of everyone was looking for that breakout with Corey Foreman. They're like, if Corey Foreman could break out, this defense can be really good. And surprisingly, they've gotten that breakout. It's just not been from Foreman. It's actually been from Solomon Byrd. Solomon Byrd's kind of been as good as all those Wyoming fans were saying he was when he came over. And yep. Funny when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, maybe we should have offered him out of high school, and hindsight's 20/20 and all that. But obviously, we should have, because he's now with USC and he's doing really well. And a lot of times they say, especially in the NFL, they say, the second guy gets the sack. Now, that's not true in Tuli Tuipulotu's case most of the time. Yeah. Most of the time, he is the first guy. But I can tell you right now, it always helps to be able to have a Solomon Byrd on the other side. And we saw that last game, too, when it was both Byrd and Nick Figueroa kind of wreaking havoc on that offensive line. And that's especially, if you get a guy like Cameron Ward in trouble all the time, a guy that knows how to dance around defenders really all up and down the field, that's obviously a good sign. And so you're seeing that kind of pass rush really kind of come to fruition. They lead the nation in sacks. They're close. I don't know what the number, they have 45 tackles for loss. That's close to the top 2. And then you mentioned some of the other playmakers on offense. I mean, I feel like I see what you're saying with Brendan Rice, because I think that a couple weeks ago, he actually did do really well. Not a ton of catches, but he had the yards. And I think that this offense is just such a situation where they spread the ball around. They have different game plans for different guys. And I think one of the reasons you may not be seeing a ton of numbers from Brendan Rice right now is because I think Lincoln Riley may have been hiding some plays for this game. I know that might sound crazy, but I think that I remember, I believe it was Justin Dietich was asking a couple weeks ago, what's your favorite play that you guys have run? And he said, well, we haven't run my favorite play. So I absolutely do think that Lincoln Riley has saved some plays for a defense like this. And maybe that's Rice, or maybe that's a play for somebody else. And then Utah hasn't covered up. And then Rice finds his way open, on another route, and, maybe a broken play or something. Just regardless, I think the whole offense hasn't been shown yet. And I really think that that's going to eventually, once all the plays get run, once they continue to kind of stay the course and run their best game plans every week, you're going to see some of the other guys like Brown and like Rice kind of show out and, be featured a little bit more from week to week.
I think also for this, for one thing I liked about Riley over some of the other, the air raid guys, because the offense is not, to me, it's not even air raid to me. It's just but it's just balance. I mean, you see it every game. They want to be as balanced as humanly possible, and they do a good job with Travis Dye. Hopefully, the other backs get more involved, because I don't want Travis to get tired out by. We need him. I mean, USC is going to need him down the stretch, and they're definitely going to have definitely need him as well to keep the chains moving. Is Caleb showing any signs? I think everybody's trying to look at chinks in the armor for USC. Do you have any concern about Caleb Williams? I think a couple times, maybe a couple plays with accuracy, but I mean nothing. I don't see anything crazy. I'm a little bit worried about the tackles on the offensive line. The pressure up the middle hasn't been coming, but I think the pressure on the outside. But that could also be him holding the ball a little bit longer and not letting it rip.
Yeah, I do think he kind of holds the ball a little bit too long. I think that's kind of followed him from Oklahoma. But interestingly, I think that there are also some times where he holds the ball on for too long, but then he's able to make a really big play. Like we saw that, it seemed like time after time in the ASU game, where it's just kind of like, all right, like get rid of the ball. But then he comes out and he makes like a 20-yard run, or, he drops a dime to somebody all the way down the field. And I think that while he does hold the ball a little bit too long, the numbers actually back that too. I think that there are some reasons why he holds the ball on too long. And that's because he knows how strong of a playmaker he is. And he knows that even if things break down, there's a good chance where if he can just try to make a play himself, he can make one. And I think that, you saw him just kind of barely complete over 50% of his passes last week. You kind of want to see more than that, obviously. But again, that's a defensive line that had been racking up a lot of tackles for loss, racking up a lot of sacks coming into the game. They could potentially be trouble. And I think the best way to get a quarterback who holds on to the ball too long off his game is to kind of put pressure on him, try to get him to see things that weren't there. But the highlights, I felt like were still there. Like those touchdowns and Mario Williams were great from Caleb. That's some kind of eye test stuff that you like to see. So I do think Caleb will be okay. But like you said, I would like to see a little bit more from the tackles when it comes to pass blocking, because they've obviously been great in the run blocking. I think they still have some room for improvement as far as pass blocking goes. And I like Monheim a lot, but I just, I think both guys, Bobby Haskins and Cortland Ford, can be a little bit better. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do get better as they kind of get more comfortable, because obviously they've been in and out of the lineup, due to injuries and things like that. I could see it getting better kind of moving down the stretch.
And they've been great in short yardage. I mean, they every time in short yardage, it's coming and you still can't stop it. They don't have a special teams coordinator on the team, which is interesting. I've never seen that. I might put an application for that to get on the staff. But last week was probably their best week of special teams play, and I think that's something that he doesn't want to have that be a reason why they lose a big game. That's always a good sign going on the road.
Yeah, no question. I think that the return game looked a lot better on both sides. Thought they were kind of covering the opposition a lot better. I like Raleigh Brown back there as a kick returner. I think he did well. Yeah. Like that's another way to kind of get his confidence up. Not that he needs more confidence, but I think that can just kind of improve his kind of mentality and get him more eased into the college game. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing against guys like Brennan Rice and GBJ who were back there in the past. It's just whatever was going on, whether it was blocking or whatever it was, I felt like Raleigh Brown kind of had it, when he was back there as a returner. And, if that continues, I'd like to see him keep taking reps there. And I think you would like to have a special teams coordinator. I think you would like to have your staff be kind of as robust as possible. But, I don't necessarily think it's because it hasn't cost them a game yet. I'm not going to, complain too much about it right now. And I think that obviously last week was obviously a good step in the right direction.
So your final thoughts, USC, it's prime time, 8 on Big Fox at 8 p.m. The East Coasters, they can't complain about the time of the game. They'll actually be able to see it. They get some milk out of the fridge and watch the game. What are your final thoughts about USC at Utah?
It's tough because I actually do think that they will lose, which I know a lot of people would not like to hear. But the reality is that's not necessarily a complete reflection of this team. I think this team will play well. I think this team will learn a lot about each other, kind of coming together for a tough environment. I just think you look at Rice Eccles, and that Utah is a different beast at home. They've won 11 straight home games. They have everything to they have nothing to lose, basically, in the sense that, how do I say this? Basically, it's a must-win game for Utah. If they don't win this game, they probably don't go to the Pac-12 title game. Right. they at least are going to have kind of a long shot to get there. So with
Mhm.
them coming up, them being in an emotional situation like that, them actually wearing helmets to honor the 2 players that passed away from their team last year, which they will be doing on Saturday, along with it being in a place, like Rice Cycles where they come to play at, and like I said, they're a different beast at. I really think there's a lot of factors mentally that are going to benefit a team with a really strong culture like Utah. And it's not that USC can't have a strong culture. I just don't think they necessarily know that they have it I don't know that they have it just yet in year 1 of a new coach. So I will pick Utah to win the game, but I do think you might see some really strong things from USC on both sides of the ball. I think that Utah's a little bit better than the way they've been playing. Again, I think they're a different team at home. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's a great one to have in prime time.
Cool. All right, Evan Desai, Rain of Troy, catch his writing over there. Thank you for joining us again on the Student Body Right USC podcast. Take care, brother.
Thank you.